Hello, my friends, and welcome to 120 Months. This is a show where we are listening to a decade's worth of music, month by month, and trying to pay attention to the way that culture and music changed during a very important decade. I am David Parsons, here with my good friend, John Lombardo. John, are you ready for another month of amazing music?
I am. Tom Waits looms over this month. Did you know that?
He does, yeah. Does
a
he
couple
show up
of
on the
ways.
Primus album, right?
In a couple of ways. I got a surprise for you.
Okay, so don't give it away all at once. Let's go month by, or I should say release by release here. So we are in May of 1991. Now, we have mentioned that 91 is a year that is known in the whole sort of trajectory of the 90s as an important year because it's the year that sort of the Seattle grunge sound leaps into the mainstream. And really, I think that as we'll see, the grunge and Seattle sound is just one element of a larger shift, right? In the way that popular music sounds in the 90s, and that's why we're talking about it. But the first album we're talking about today that came out in May 1991 is an album called Gish. It is the debut studio album by the Smashing Pumpkins, who of course become legends for their music and mini album releases, which I'm sure we'll be thinking about and talking about throughout this podcast. But Gish is a very special thing. And I'll just open by saying, we've made fun of Billy Corgan a little bit in past episodes for his his personality and his his kind of like very, I guess, arrogant presentation on his podcast. But listening to this album was another kind of revelation for me. I'm a Smashing Pumpkins fan, but I'm not like a super fan. I don't know all their stuff. I know like their hits and some of their bigger albums. I don't know if I've sat and listened to Gish all the way through before. I've definitely heard some of these songs, but I have to say, and I wonder what you think about it, John, I really enjoyed this album. This was a maybe honestly, maybe my favorite thing that I've heard from Smashing Pumpkins, and maybe that's just because it's new to me, and I've heard the "World is a Vampire" 3,000 times in my life, or more probably.
That's a great riff, though.
Yeah, it is.
No.
But what do you think of Gish?
I agree with you. It's my favorite Smashing Pumpkins record.
Yeah,
And there's a few reasons for it that we'll get into. So, but to put it in the context of what we're talking about in the 90s, I'm glad you said what you said. Because at the time, Nirvana is a black hole that sucks all the attention of like what happened with the underground taking over the mainstream in the 90s. But this is one of the albums that rang that bell.
yeah,
This was one of the heralds of this new thing is coming.
totally.
If you were making music back then, you kind of had resigned if you were an alternative rock band, as I was and many of my friends were at that time, you resigned yourself that you're going to probably live in the underground. Like, a few bands had broken out like REM, but for the most part, you're going to be the Replacements. You're going to be the Jayhawks. You're going to be one of these underground rock bands that tours, and like if that's going to be your life, that's what's going to happen. And that's cool, None of us had dreams of becoming superstars at that point. Really, like we knew we weren't going to be U2. We were playing heavier, crazier music.
So you didn't have the thought of like, we got to do this and get signed and get $1 billion and get on MTV.
We did have
Yeah.
all those thoughts. We just didn't think it was going to go that well.
Oh, okay, right.
We just didn't think that was where our bread and butter was going to come from.
Right.
And one of the bands that made us all go, oh, maybe there is a way to do this was Smashing Pumpkins, and Gish was the record that got so much mainstream press attention. I remember at the time, it's a platinum album. It took 10 years to go platinum, but it wasn't just some little thing. It was a really well regarded, well received album.
And you were aware of this album when it came out?
Oh yes.
Okay, so see, I'm like, I was a little bit younger than you in the era, but I was also not so tapped into this type of music, and it wasn't. I think I'm the rest of like mainstream America. I didn't learn about the Smashing Pumpkins until Siamese Dream, and the video for Today is the Greatest. That song, you know what I'm saying?
Sure.
That's what kind of introduced Smashing Pumpkins to me. I didn't know this album.
The two songs that really sealed their stardom came out in rapid succession. First was Cherub Rock, and then Today, off of I think it was Siamese Dream. Is that right? So, but if you were making music in the underground scene, you knew about this record. It was in all of the magazines and the hipper, the Matt, what's his name on
Matt
Pinfield was talking about it. And,
Yeah.
and they were getting written up in like, BAM magazine and the cool magazines that everybody wanted to be in, Cashbox and stuff like that. There was an awareness that something was happening with these guys. That they were like I said, I think this album is one of the alarm bells ringing for the rest of the world that, hey, this type of aggressive guitar rock is going to dominate mainstream music in the United States of America for the next half a decade or so,
Well, aggressive guitar rock already existed, right? But this is very different tone to it. And there's a way that Corgan describes in an interview I read the sound of this album, and I was thinking about it already because I was like, wow, you can really hear their influences on Gish. Like by the time you get to the later like Melancholy and like the sort of big Smashing Pumpkins albums of the later '90s, they sound like the Smashing Pumpkins. But on this record, for whatever reason, I could really be like, oh, here's the Led Zeppelin song, here's the Black Sabbath.
Well, that's interesting.
That sort of sound. But what I read is he said what we were really trying to do was like take the sound of like the 60s and 70s classic rock like Zeppelin and Black Sabbath and mix it in with like the stuff like the My Bloody Valentine and Susie and the Banshees and the Beatles being the suture between those two places. And I thought, well, that's a really like kind of hammy way of putting it, but I can hear all of that stuff there in the way that they're kind of like making music that's really multi-layered and textured. Each song on this album feels like it has sections to it, that there are many sounds going on at once. It's like it's really layered. It's not just like and we'll get to this, but like the next album we talk about is the Melvins album. And the Melvins, you can really just hear it's just a couple instruments making this noise. Whereas with Smashing Pumpkins, it feels like there's a lot going on. I think there's two guitars always. Is that right?
James Ehal's the second guitar player.
Right.
I think Billy plays most of the guitars on these early records. Well, I had a little bit of a different experience, but I'll tell you what I mean. But so the reason this is my favorite Smashing Pumpkins record is because to me, it's the most. They sound like a band the most.
Yeah.
And not one person doing it. Now you could say the songs on later records are better, and that's probably true. Billy becomes more of a songwriter and less of a dude that's like. But I just feel like, first of all, Jimmy Chamberlain is a monster. He's such a great drummer, and he's really featured on these songs. He sets the tone, and that's what Billy Corgan said. He said that remember, if you recall, their first couple of gigs they were playing with a drum machine.
That's right, and this guy's a jazz drummer or had that background.
Boy, can you hear that?
Yeah,
like I've got a couple notes in here about this, but so Billy said that when Jimmy joined the band, it changed everything he thought was possible about what they could do in terms of just power and energy. But there's a couple songs there. There's a song called Window Pane. The way he brings them back into the song after the breakdown, that's some jazz shit on the snare. Just that, like the way he's playing the snare, it was tasty, man. He's a great drummer, and he's so featured on this. He's such a part of. He sets the tone for everything. And then Billy, on this record, more than any other Smashing Pumpkins record, he seems just intent on being a guitar monster. And I love that about. That's my favorite thing about him. He's not my favorite songwriter. He's not my favorite singer, but he's a fucking great guitar player.
I think I agree with that.
Yeah.
And I think that might be the thing that brings me back to Smashing Pumpkins again and again is the guitar work. I just love it.
Like there's a song on here called "Bury Me."
Oh yeah, go ahead.
It's a guitar player's wet dream. Like it's
totally.
Just the way it comes in. It pops in with that it's like the beginning of Synchronicity 2 by the Police, and then Nirvana also did it later on a plane. But it's really cool. It's very 90s. It's a feedback tone.
Yes.
It slides in like off a tape speeding up.
It's super cool. All those little things that happen. Claudia went to see Smashing Pumpkins many years ago, and she went with friends. I didn't go. And she came back, and I was like, "How was the show?" And she was like, "Oh, Corgan was sort of lost doing his guitar thing. He was doing like these 25-minute solos where it seemed like he forgot he was on stage and he was just, kept
I'd probably
riffing.
love that.
And I was like, I would love that. That sounds awesome.
Well, let's look. They were never my favorite band, okay? But this is a good fucking album. But I want to talk about Billy a little bit.
Yeah.
Now, a little bit of background. I really did not listen to Smashing Pumpkins very much in the 90s. We played some shows with them.
Yes.
And frankly, as people, I found them off-putting back then. They weren't warm and welcoming. And
I can imagine this.
And whatever. I don't.
Yeah.
But just that kind. I didn't listen to their. I knew their hit songs. I thought they were great. I understood what Billy was. And seeing them live back then was the same thing. Like, it's really the Billy Corgan show with this fucking badass drummer, and anybody could be the bass player and drummer and the other guitar player in that band.
Interesting.
Right? So that's just the way I took it. That's what it was like to me. So I didn't spend a lot of time on their music. I also found his way of singing a little grating to me back then. But he now obviously he believes that he is a visionary and a genius. He's not afraid to say it. Is he wrong?
No. That's what's so frustrating.
I gotta say,
if he were wrong, dude, then I wouldn't be talking about him at all. And like when I say like, oh, Billy Corgan annoys me, or I find him arrogant, or something like that, part of me is kind of just bristling at the fact that I'm like, fuck, dude, he's right. Like,
he in a way,
I can listening to this album. I mean, I already love the Smashing Pumpkins, and again, I'm not the biggest super fan, but they are. I think I would admit like one of my favorite bands of the '90s. But listening to this album, I was like, this guy's a fucking genius.
Yeah. So. That's what I'm going to like. There's plenty of opportunities to make fun of Billy Corgan, and he's going to give us more.
Yes.
The way he talks on his podcast. But I do want to say that listening to this record, I was going, who is this guy influenced by?
Yeah.
I can't hear any influences.
Oh, really?
Maybe there's a little Zeppelin, a little Sabbath. I do hear some of that Britpop stuff from them, but like there's a little bit of that. I feel if there's anything I hear in their music, it's a connection to psychedelia, like that Haight Ashbury scene or 60s.
He's
psychedelic rock music, but they're like I'll say this about Smashing Pumpkins. They're a band like I could name that band in 2 notes. Right away it's them.
Yeah.
And I don't hear him being influenced by a lot. And that's true later records too. So he does kind of create his own thing that becomes massively successful. Well, so maybe he is a visionary genius.
He is. And what I would say is key to his genius and sort of to think about that influences thing is I think he swallowed his influences, internalized them, and made something genuinely new out of the stuff that had built his sort of persona and his attitude towards what music should sound like. Like, for instance, last month we listened to a Lenny Kravitz album called Mama Said. If you listen to that, you could be like, well, he's just doing Hendrix riffs here. He's just
Beatles and Hendrix.
Yeah, it's very on the surface. And that was, in fact, what a lot of music critics said about that Lenny Kravitz album, where they're like, well, he's more of a recreating artist than, like, there's a couple of bands like that today, Wolf Mother, Greta Von Fleet, I think is the other one, where they're just kind of copying. They're kind of like just cover bands.
Yeah, just go listen to Led Zeppelin. You don't
right, exactly.
Yeah.
Where I think that what I appreciate and why I think Corgan's a genius is when I say, oh, that sounds like Led Zeppelin or Black Sabbath to me, I'm saying that it feels like he's listened to that stuff so carefully that he was able to create something genuinely new out of a similar sort of tone and sound.
That's what genius is.
Yeah.
It creates something truly unique. And I've been a songwriter since I was 13, and my moments of genius have been very, very rare. My son listens to our records that we made, and gives me so much shit for like, Pixies, Fugazi, like all this shit I was ripping off,
Yep.
And I think that you rip off your heroes. There's nothing wrong with that,
But arguably no one creates anything genuinely new. You're always sort of referencing something somehow,
Yeah.
You didn't just make it up.
But I can't hear that in Pumpkins.
Yeah.
I do feel I can't hear what he is being influenced by, and I say that to his credit.
There's a section of this album where I'm just like sold, and it starts on track 3, Rhinoceros, and it goes from Rhinoceros to a song called Bury Me, to a song called Crush, to a
Yeah.
song called Suffer.
Yeah.
That sort of like 4-song suite that's in the middle, dead middle of this album, Gish. To me, I'm just like because there's a softer tone to it. It's not just like hard guitars.
Yeah,
There's like
there's some melody.
yeah, and there's just a lot of songwriting craft to it. But I was also like, this is like some of the like the Black Sabbath song Caravan. That's got like if you've heard that, it's like
I don't know it.
You would recognize it. It's sort of like got a softer tone. You're always going, oh, this is a little more psychedelic, a little more spacey.
Yeah.
And I mean that in every way. Spacey as in like kind of
Like
stoner
Kevin?
rock. Yeah, and it's Kevin Spacey. Exactly. The same guy.
Spacey is a good word to use to describe
yeah.
Pumpkins. Yeah.
Yeah, and it just but also space in terms of like it's not so crowded. It feels like we're playing with some space in
There's
that
some breath.
sense.
It's breathing a little bit.
It's just so fucking cool.
I'm gonna go up somebody's ass about this later on another record.
Yes.
That's a great way of putting it. And you know what? I was just thought of this as you were talking. One of the things Smashing Pumpkins has. I always still call them Smashing Pumpkins. I think they're called the Smashing
I
Pumpkins.
think it can go either way.
but-
It's the same with the Melvins. They're the Melvins or Melvins. And whatever I say on Instagram, people will be like, oh, actually, it's the Melvins. Or they'll say, actually, it's just Melvins.
I'm gonna do
And
both.
I'm like, it doesn't fucking matter, dude.
the Smashing Pumpkins or Smashing Pumpkins.
Yes.
One of the things that Billy Corgan has as an artist that we've talked about, this is a kinship he has with the whole Seattle sound and a lot of the rock that became popular in the 90s is a powerful feminine energy.
Totally.
Like it's not cock rock, it's furious with the energy and the playing is virtuoso and it's great, but there is a feminine energy in this. And once again, listen to those songs you talk about, Bury Me, Suffer. Like those are the elements now. It's not, we're riding down the strip on a motorcycle going to get some pussy. That's not what he's singing about.
That'd be hilarious if Corgan could inhabit that. No, I mean, he is sort of there's something weirdly androgynous about him, in his presentation.
That's true,
and in his voice,
I think all those guys.
I think a lot of, I would argue, and I could be wrong here, but I bet a lot more women listen to Smashing Pumpkins than listen to like Van Halen or something like that.
For sure. I thought of this listening to this record like somehow this is music that women would listen to. And I think that's true of that's true of Soundgarden and Alice in Chains and Weezer. Like I think that these huge star songwriters of the 90s changed rock in that way. You can talk about the sound, the way it's influenced and informed by punk rock and it's DIY and it's alternative. But I think that feminine energy in the presentation and in the writing is part of what made it so popular.
And it's just, and it's just not overtly hostile to women, which a lot of that music was. I think that's true. I think that's a really key thing. Claudia is a huge Smashing Pumpkins fan. And as we know, the kids are listening to 90s music these days, and I see a lot of young women wearing Smashing Pumpkins t-shirts.
I'm getting your guitar right now,
Yeah.
and I think it would be funny if I started doing like the David Bowie thing and singing about you, like just looking at you writing the song.
Do it, yeah.
Bearded. No. So I want to talk about the song.
Oh, I was looking forward to that.
The song.
Next time, yeah.
That song, Rhinoceros.
Yes.
I'm going to blow some more smoke up Billy Corgan's ass.
Please.
In my opinion, this is just my opinion. I think he wrote a song that created one of the songs that created a bridge between 80s alternative music and some of the things that would be super popular in the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember thinking this at the time, that when I heard that song. So he's got, it's like he's in that ringing E, and with the ringing A, he's like a... You know that song I'm talking about?
Yes. Oh,
Okay?
yeah.
So that droning note with the, like singing along with it,
Yeah.
la la la, that was very 80s. The REM did that a lot with like Seven Chinese Brothers
Yeah.
and the Cult, that was a very 80s underground music thing. A droning note.
Yeah.
With U2 did it a lot,
Totally.
he's doing that in Rhinoceros, but then when the song kicks in, he's doing the, you know, like that octave thing, that rock and octave thing. That's what everybody was doing in the early 90s. So to me as a guitar player, I thought he took this thing that we all knew and was very familiar and used it in a cool way in that song. And then there's this other thing that's very, once again, not brand new, but became very popular. And Weezer does it all the time. A lot of bands do that octave thing. And I just thought that was a really cool thing at the time. Like, oh, wow, he's taking these two things and sort of also with what he's doing as a singer and the heaviness at the end of the song, I thought that song was a bridge between those two decades.
That's really interesting because in the interview I read, Corgan says that he thought of Rhinoceros, that song specifically, as a statement of purpose.
Really?
So what you're identifying, I think, is really important.
That was college radio was it in the late 80s, early 90s for how there was no internet, obviously. How did you find out about these cool artists doing things, not just punk and alternative, world beat, all kinds of artists, the Indigo Girls, right? Like all kinds of artists. The college radio was the garden in which all these flowers sprouted. And that song Rhinoceros was a college radio song. That's where I heard it on college radio. And they were darlings of college radio. And then very much so. I would love to just give Billy Corgan shit because my experiences of him back then when I didn't really meet him, but that's when you're on tour with a band and they don't want to meet you, it's kind of like, oh, fuck you, you know? And then but did I ever tell you the story that we didn't play this show? I just happened to be there with I don't remember, some record person I knew got me backstage or something. And I know it was in Seattle. I don't remember what the show was. But I saw it was during the day and there was like an artist's area, like a backstage, and there was a bar and a restaurant and stuff. And I think as I remember this, it was at a bar, but they weren't drinking. I saw Kim Thale of Soundgarden talking to Billy Corgan. And I kind of got close enough to where I could listen.
Yeah.
They would never have, if you asked either of those guys today, they didn't know I was there.
Right.
And from what I hear, super interesting. Billy was like, mopey, leaning forward on the bar. I don't know what he was going through at the time, but Kim Thale is giving him this pep talk. Like, dude, you're successful. You got hit songs. Everybody loves you. You got to chin up. Like, and going on and on, but like he sounded like Tony Robbins, like he gave Kim Thale, who looks like back then, he looked like a guy that would sell you fucking crack, he had black and gray long beard and bags under his eyes. And Kim, if you're watching, I'm so sorry, but that obviously he's a lovely human being, but he was just giving him this pep talk. And Billy was just sitting there like kind of nodding his head. It was the most interesting thing to see.
Well, that doesn't surprise me because there's obviously a degree of pathos in Billy Corgan that produces these songs and this attitude that's beyond just the I'm the greatest guy in the world. Because if it were just that, then he would sound like fucking David Lee Roth or something. You know what I mean? Or Ice Cube or whatever. Instead, what we're attracted to, and I think is part of the even the feminine energy we're identifying here, which I think is a really important thing, the gender element of 90s music and 90s rock in particular. But, he's got a vulnerability about him. He's got a self-doubt about him. And that part of it comes through in the music, and it's very appealing and attractive to have that sort of, because I feel, the thing that Billy Corgan is most known for visually is wearing a T-shirt that says zero, And I always felt like, like guys with bad self-esteem would sort of wear the zero shirt and just be like, I'm just a zero. There's something actually ironically narcissistic about self-hatred.
Of course.
You know what I mean? When you think about it.
It's still self-focused.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like, I hate
just the
myself,
other side
man.
of the coin, yeah.
Like I've had friends over the years that all they talk about is how much they hate themselves.
Yeah.
I'm like, you love yourself, dude. Like there's something.
You're still only thinking of yourself.
There's an ego there.
Yeah. Just go out and do something for somebody else. See how you feel.
Shut the fuck up. But the other thing I was going to say is I saw one last thing about Smashing Pumpkins and Billy Corgan, because I know we'll return to them. But I saw an interview with Billy Corgan on, I think it was Howard Stern, and they were talking about Neil Young, who is a figure that sort of looms over the 90s in so many ways. He keeps coming back.
Yeah.
And he says he had a conversation with Neil Young while they were both on tour in Japan. They were standing on a subway platform in Tokyo, and Billy Corgan was saying to Neil Young, I don't know if things are going well, like with the record company, with my music, everything sucks. And he was expressing that sort of self-hatred kind of and doubt about the whole project. And Neil Young, he said it was very important, just the whole attitude. It was nothing particular that he said other than just sort of shrugging his shoulders and said, like, well, you just got to keep walking, man. And like, that's so Neil Young, you know. Just got to keep putting one foot in front of the other. Like, what are you going to do? And like that sort of idea that you just keep going. And that's the only choice you have. He said it was very important to him to hear that.
I'll bet.
Yeah, because it was so no nonsense.
In Billy Corgan's defense,
yeah,
it's hard to be 25.
Yeah.
And it's got to be really hard to be 25 and be a star.
Right. And we talked about how they were getting shit from like other underground musicians who were like thinking they were stepping ahead and shit. Yeah, I mean the jealousy.
Not during Gish.
Yeah.
When this record came out, they were.
This is before that.
They were widely looked up to.
Right. I think that Pavement song isn't until like 94 or something. Yeah. 94 is I think of it as a huge year too. So we'll get to that. Okay. So final comments on Smashing Pumpkins.
Standout song is "Bury Me" for me. That's a great. Just if you are a guitar player and you don't dig "Bury Me," are you a guitar player?
Yeah.
It's just got such a great vibe. It's got so much fury and melodiousness, and I do think this is my favorite Smashing Pumpkins record.
Totally, I feel the same way. But maybe I'll change my mind as we listen more carefully to the rest of their catalog moving forward through the '90s. But let's move on to another big guitar band that I think is regarded as highly influential to the Seattle sound, and a band that I will admit I've never heard before, and their sound actually surprised me. This band is called Melvins. I think it's just Melvins, not the Melvins. But this album is called Bullhead. It's the third studio album, and I was surprised by the sound of it because it's very like stoner metal, like sort of sludge metal. It's got a sort of slow tempo to a lot of the songs.
Sabbathy.
Yeah, right. What did you think of Melvins? Because I don't think you've listened to them much in your life either. They have a huge catalog, by the way.
So once again, everybody knew who they were back then.
Right. I've heard the Melvins my whole life. I've heard of this name.
Their legend reaches far beyond what their music did.
Right.
And it's because of a lot of things. Kurt Cobain used to hang out with them.
Yeah.
He actually, we'll talk about it. He produced a few songs on one of their major label debut, and then they fired him because he was fucked up on drugs. But they were well known. But first of all, this album, I don't know if I like this record, but I was intrigued by it.
That's exactly how I felt. I was like, I want to hear the rest of their stuff.
Crazy.
Because I know that they're all over the place, dude. Like their influences and their sort of like styles, I think, shift a lot. They started out as like an 80s hardcore
Yeah, they started
band.
out in the 80s. They're from the same, I think they're from either the same town or very close to where Nirvana's from, Aberdeen, Washington.
Yep.
They said there was a rumor that Kurt was their roadie.
That's funny.
And they're all like, Kurt wasn't our roadie. He hung out with us stuff, but he wasn't big enough. He was 85 pounds. He couldn't carry anything.
Right.
And Kurt was tiny. If you remember, he was so tiny. And so they recorded this record in 5 days. They were kind of changing their sound up from what they had done in the 80s, but they are considered extremely influential. This is what I read. Now this is on the internet. I don't know how true this is. But that they were one of the first guys to use the drop D tuning, which is very, very much a part of the Seattle sound. And you can hear it on here with that E string just wobbles differently, man. It's a little looser, and it adds a low note to a lot of the bar chords you're doing. So they have that sound very much, and a couple things amazed me about this record. The first, I'll just keep in the Kurt Cobain theme. This this record is a massive influence on Bleach,
Mm-hmm.
the Nirvana album Bleach.
Yeah.
Like they have a song. They have a song called Zodiac, and you could sing Negative Creep over it. You know the song, I'm a negative creep.
Totally.
And so I think Kurt Cobain watched these guys and went, oh, I want to do that. But because he's so naturally gifted a songwriter, he did what they did with more melody and more hooks.
Kind of like Corgan, taking his influences and not just copying them, but sort of building on them in some way.
I had no idea how influential Melvins were on that album. Like,
Yeah.
Nevermind sounds nothing like Melvins. But
Well,
Bleach,
speaking of Nevermind, just to go back really quick, because we didn't mention that Gish was produced by Butch Vig.
That's right.
And he puts out Nevermind later in the year.
Right.
And I think people generally regard that as a step towards Nevermind. In other words, Gish and Butch Vig's production of Gish influenced his approach on Nevermind to the point where Corgan later accuses Cobain of stealing his sound, which is really funny.
Of course he does.
Yeah.
No, to me, the Nirvana and Smashing Pumpkins do not sound anything alike, so I don't know what Corgan's talking about. But Butch Vig had a fucking great year in '91.
Right, yeah.
Wow. So there was huge influence on that. But like these guys, they all look like serial killers.
Yes.
You know? And
well, the look of the main Melvins guy, Buzz Osborne, or King Buzz, is an iconic look. Like, I knew who that guy was. With his hair. Specifically his hair, but like he's like an icon of alternative rock in the 90s, I think.
Well,
he still looks like that, except the hair is white.
They sound to me, I was enthralled by them without going, oh, this is a great song. It's just where are they going to go next? I just feel like they were just totally improvisational.
Yeah.
And he is like the fucking, I got a note in here. Buzz, he is like Sam Kinison meets Meatloaf. You know what I mean? Like, there's this drama and emotion to the way he sings. He's not just shrieking and screaming. He
does these growls.
These growls and these and it's not fake and put on. It's very emotional and it somehow fits the music. And then they're also one of those bands. I'm just like the way they do changes and the way they do repetitive stuff. I was just like, how do you learn a song like this?
Yeah.
Like, how do you go, yeah, I know what's coming next.
They're jazz influenced too.
Are they really?
Yeah, they're people that are like study Miles Davis and shit like that. And I think they've put out more jazzy, avant-garde type stuff. But this album sounds like I said, like kind of sludge metal. I like that sound, that doom metal sound, because we've listened to some metal albums that are like in the thrash sort of speed metal category. Just the Panteras and that sort of stuff. I like this sound a lot better.
Oh, me too.
Like this delivers something. The vibe of it is the doom is probably the right word. There's something ominous. It's probably why you're on the edge of your seat while you're listening to this album, because you're like, where are they going with this? It's so fucking scary.
And I'll tell you,
cool sound.
One of the ways they create that sense of doom is in the way it's recorded.
Yeah.
Everything's got this crazy reverb on it. The drums sound very interesting. I would love to know how they recorded the drums on this record. They did a bunch of different things. Like, there's a song on here called there's a song called Ligature.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the drums for a long time, it's not a drum solo, he's just playing a beat. And there's a bizarre type of room reverb on the drums that they sound like drums, of course, but I swear there's a menace to the way the drums were recorded.
Yeah.
I don't know how they accomplished it. And then there's a song called Cow. Mm-hmm. It sounds like they just said, let's go record in this airplane hangar, and we'll just put room mics up. And so they really experimented with the way they capture the sounds.
Yeah, and I mean, we mentioned space. This is another spacey album in every way. You know, sort of a little bit psychedelic in that sense, but also there's room to breathe on this album, and that's partly what is so unnerving about the sound, because it's just sort of like you're left with these bits of silence at times.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it.
And what has just happened rings through the silence.
Dong,
And this,
dong, dong.
there's a tension. It
Yeah.
makes it builds an anxiety and a tension. This is what I miss so much in almost all modern music, because almost all modern music is created in such a way that it's processed through something. What we're hearing has been processed through a patch or a pedal or a computer program or software or whatever. This is just mics capturing what got played out in the room.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so much more interesting to my ears.
Yeah.
That kind of, I just, stuff that's, been processed heavily. I know that there's great guitar patches and stuff that people use. And, we'll talk about it more later in this session, but like, you don't have to worry about how am I going to make this guitar sound interesting. You just try a bunch of buttons and then go, okay, I like that sound.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's something lost in that.
Yeah, I agree. This is there's something organic about this album. It does sound
very
like
much
a couple of crazy dudes in a room.
They have a song on the institute called "You're Blessed."
Yes.
And I thought, like, because this is so early on and influential, and I'm wondering, did Jerry Cantrell listen to this? Because they're doing this bend that follows this guitar bend that it's not like a lot of times when people have been in the notes, they're playing a solo note like
yeah, yeah,
but they're like it's part of the groove of the song. It's part of the main riff of the song, and Cantrell does that a lot.
Yeah.
To great effect, by the way. It's really cool.
Yeah, this is a cool album, and again, I was surprised by it because I thought that I was going to hear sort of more like a pop punk type stuff.
Yeah.
That's what I was expecting.
Me too.
Instead, I got this.
And funny.
I was like, oh, okay. And then immediately I was like, I appreciate this. Like, I like this.
Somehow I had
there's not as much humor as I thought there was going to be.
I had it in my mind that they were going to have an element like bands like Vandals and Flipper.
Right.
Like they're kind of funny, no. And my standout song is Anaconda. It's very dynamic, interesting. I will listen to this record again. Not for a long time.
Yeah.
But I will at some point. Like
it's heavy.
It's heavy.
Heavy album.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so let's move on. Switching gears, but I think that some of the themes from this other stuff will come into this discussion of this album. This album is called De La Soul is Dead, the second studio album by a hip-hop group called De La Soul. They're from Amityville, Long Island, New York, which I think is important because what you get on this on the sound of De La Soul, they're doing a very different sort of take on what hip hop is in this era, and really they're a big part of another tent pole in the whole hip hop world that really becomes very influential in the 90s, which is, we've talked about before, this sort of like jazz rap stuff. They got different production sounds, but also different attitudes and ideas. Very, very different from the Ice Cube and NWA and even the Public Enemy stuff that we've listened to on the show so far. And I really appreciate De La Soul. They're much more in the world of hip hop that I really like. Because of that approach, it's much more accessible to a white suburban kid to hear the kind of concerns that De La Soul bring out. Their sort of hippie, intelligent approach to rap music and hip hop. They're just a hugely influential band, and this particular album is their second one, where they're actually trying to more self-consciously distance themselves from other bits of hip hop and even their own first album. But I want to say before we even start, what I thought was really cool about this album is its humor, and it's sort of they're sort of doing parodies of other forms of music. They have a house, they have a parody of house music on here that's sort of like, I think, going after like Delight or like CNC Music Factory, the stuff that was big. They're all that crap that was big in the early 90s. But they also go after the whole gangster rap attitude. Yeah. Like there's one song where there's sort of like the guy says like, well, I get up in the morning and I go beat the shit out of someone and steal their fucking money, and that's my job. And I'm like, these guys are part of what I talked about on the last episode, which is, for lack of a better term, postmodernism. But the culture really becomes aware of itself in the 90s, and hip-hop is becoming aware of itself and starting to comment on hip-hop as a genre and as an attitude. And De La Soul are just really, really smart and good at doing that. So this was a really interesting album to me. I don't think I've listened to it before.
Well, listen. The world needs me to opine about hip hop in the 90s.
It does.
I am an expert. No,
well, you were a huge Public Enemy fan.
Oh, gosh.
And we talked about that album in a lot of detail. So I'm wondering how it where it fits in that trajectory for you.
Doing this podcast has taught me something that I did not know before this, which is. Apparently, I'm bald. No.
You didn't know that?
I didn't see. I don't have a mirror. No. What I have learned by going back and listening to all his music is the early '90s was like a golden age for hip hop.
Oh yeah,
wasn't it?
Yes.
I did not know that not to the extent I've learned. I said like the '70s was such a golden age for rock music and film.
Right.
The early '90s is a golden age for hip hop. Like with Gangstar and even Ice Cube stuff.
Well, this sounded like the Gangstar, and it's kind of more in that mode.
That sort of jazz.
Yep.
This is such a cool record. It's so beat centric, first of all.
Yeah.
And I love the way there's samples. Each song seems to be sampled. To me, it felt like it was sampled from an era.
Yeah.
Like the 20s or the 40s. Like some of it, there's a lot of skits that they do.
Yes.
In here, and by the way, the people in those skits are very Long Island. The girls at the
oh yeah,
at the
that's why I thought the Long Island thing was important, because it's a suburban sensibility rather than an urban sensibility here.
Yeah, that's right. That's a very good way of putting it.
Yeah, and this is like, to me, this is like the equivalent of like the college radio stuff becoming popular. This is like the college radio. Underground, a little more subversive and weird and funny guys are doing hip hop now, and they're starting to become more popular.
But it's not street music.
No, not at all.
It's not like there's these separate ongoing skits, and there's parodies of children's books. Someone does a Kermit the Frog impersonation.
That's great.
Like you said, they're making jokes about being, I'm a gangster. I shoot people. Which I think is funny. Listen. I respect and love that, because I hate how little misogyny has been called out in hip hop music. Yeah. And I also, while I have respect for the people who created the form, like NWA and Ice Cube, gangster rap is largely bullshit.
Yes.
I told you the story of Snoop Dogg and my friend being at my house when my kids were little, and he's like, he's using the N-word, this N right here pimps hoes. And I said, no, he doesn't. He lives in a fucking mansion. He's selling this lifestyle to young boys. Bullshit.
It's very close, actually, to how you said that, like satanic devil metal music is sort of like you roll your eyes at it.
It's
like,
a caricature.
This isn't so evil. This isn't so heavy. Actually, Violent Femmes are heavier than Sepultura. And in a lot of ways, I'm like, De La Soul are doing something heavier than NWA or something because they're tapping into something real. Whereas NWA and Ice Cube, there's something, and I love all that music.
They're commenting on something they saw, but it's not authentic to them.
Well, it's
they're
also
casting themselves in the movie.
Yes, and at some point you start to see through the facade, and when it gets to be really obvious, like the songs where they're just like "suck my dick, bitch," like talking about like shooting people and killing people and stuff like that. You're sort of like rolling your eyes, like this is just like, especially when there's no humor to it.
If you're a real fucking gangster, gang banging and fucking copping dope and selling dope, selling dope and you shooting cops and shit, guess what? You're fucking
prison.
In jail or dead, like Eazy-E, who was the only guy in NWA who was a real gangster. And like now, look at Ice Cube now. I mean, I love his music, right?
Yeah.
He's fucking making rom-coms
Right.
and family films. Look at Ice-T, you
They're
know?
performers.
Ice-T, Colors,
They're
Colors.
performers, and
He's
they were
a fucking
playing
cop
with,
on Special Victims Unit for 25 years,
yeah.
so
They were
it's-
playing characters, and I think that's part of what was appealing to me. If you like understand that they're playing a character, it's like, okay, they're playing the bad guy in here, and that's always been an appealing part of pop culture, is the sort of when the villain has a sort of like voice.
Well, maybe
you know?
maybe at some point it was real.
Yeah.
But if you're an artist, you authentically do your thing based on what is real. Like we talked about David Lee Roth being 40 years old and still having a bunch of girls' butts behind him. It's like, okay, move on.
Yes.
Like, same thing. Like so I all of that is to say that this hip hop persona that gets sold to young boys, it's all bullshit. Well, these guys are they're rich people.
Right.
Snoop Dogg is not a thug.
Right.
So maybe he was at some point. But he sold that persona long past it being his reality. I dig guys like De La Soul, Gangstar, people doing like stuff like that, because they were never a caricature. They were never doing something that wasn't authentic to who they are. They have something to say. They say it in a very unique way, and it's not designed to sell the individual as something he isn't.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, there's an authenticity there. They're just fucking hilarious, and
they are funny.
They reminded me of a lot of different things. But there was a hip hop group called Das Racist that was a New York group years ago, maybe 2010, somewhere in there, 2008, 2009, somewhere in there. And I was like, I listened to them a lot. I love Das Racist. And I listening to this De La Soul record, I was like, oh, okay, here's this attitude. This sort of like goofy, we're kind of goofing on the other people in hip hop. But what's interesting about De La Soul is they're part of this whole larger thing that happens where there's, the word for it was conscious rap. And I think that word isn't considered the right term anymore. But in the 90s, people were talking about conscious rap. It was like the kind of rap that like white stoners listen to. You know what I mean? Like, it's college radio stuff.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah.
And there's something psychedelic about De La Soul.
Yeah, there is.
And they were pioneers in the skits and the sort of like, when you put this on, this album isn't just a collection of songs. It's got kind of stories written into it. And like,
that's right.
You hear people talking, and you hear like there's a lot of ideas at play.
There's skits and
you
bits
can sort
and
of
characters. Yeah.
You can put it on and sort of get lost in it. It's a big album.
It's also very in tune with the spirit of the 90s.
Yeah.
In my opinion, because there's so much experimentation that once again, like, they're just trying these ideas, and they're talented enough that the ideas work.
It's fun too. I think that's
super
key.
fun.
Like Ice Cube isn't necessarily fun to listen to. I'm always kind of like, ugh. Like his stuff, like it's great production, great beats. Ice Cube's personality is unbelievable in terms of how rich a character he creates.
And he's very
but I'm
authentic,
never
yeah.
like I want to put this on at a party. Like De La Soul is,
Yeah.
De La Soul's got a groove to it. Like it's sort of like, it's fun to listen to me. Like this is just like a taste thing maybe. But I like this this particular style of hip hop.
too.
We missed actually in 1990 the first album from Tribe Called Quest, who are sort of very much. So we'll come back because Tribe Called Quest has their second album comes out later in 91, and I thought we could listen
What's
to
it
both
called?
of those.
Is that the one with the faces of all the hip hop legends on it?
Yeah.
That's a great album.
Yeah, so they're really important because they're in this genre too,
Yeah.
where they're doing a kind of a more, I don't want to say more thoughtful, but a different take on whatever hip hop is.
Right.
And they're really influential, and they're and there are other artists like Mos Def, Talib Kweli, and even Queen Latifah, who's often mentioned within
She's
this
part of
group.
that thing, right?
Yeah, that she does something a little softer, a little more positive. That's not necessarily just about. I mean, we said like the attitude towards women here in the same way that Billy Corgan and Smashing Pumpkins are not doing David Lee Roth and are not doing like girls
Right.
and a misogynist attitude.
Yeah.
De La Soul, they don't refer to women as bitches and hoes on this album. They're much more they have a softer attitude towards relationships and things like that. And it's funny too. And I think humor goes a long way for me.
What did you think about the biddies and the BK
Hilarious. Yeah.
First of all, I did when I was in the Tony and Tina's show in Vegas.
Yes.
A lot of those girls were from Long Island, and I'm
Yeah.
like totally the way they're like, the way they're talking. Those are
Yes.
Long Island girls in that sketch.
Yes.
It's so great, and it's super funny. First of all, De La Soul, if you're watching, the first thing they did was make fun of Vanilla Ice. So
Yeah. Right.
thank
That's
you.
right.
That's amazing. But I just love that they see, once again, the wealth of ideas here. They have a song where they're whistling. There's a sample of a whistle of the Bee Gees, the melody from More Than a Woman. And then I think in that same song, I think that's a sample of Walk This Way, the drums, isn't it? Isn't it from Aerosmith? Like that's a really smart marriage of an idea to me.
Right.
If you're gonna construct songs, which hip hop does, they're not playing them as a band, right? So the great job on that. And then they sampled George Clinton on the Schwingalokate. There's so I wanted to ask you, because like I said, you said something interesting, and I agree with you. And like I said, sometimes the song felt like, oh, this is rooted in like a 20s feel.
Yeah.
This one's rooted like I'm listening to the radio in the early 40s.
There's even like a skating rink disco song.
Skating rink disco song in the 70s maybe. And then there's a thing where it goes ding to turn the page, like a kid's book.
Yes.
It's so inventive, so much invention. But you said something about there's a psychedelic tone to it.
Yeah.
What do you think where is that coming from?
To me, when I say that, I mean that the album kind of it's got a weirdness to it that draws you into kind of the way that it skips around, the way that, like, you're talking about the shift in tones. It's not just one thing. It's sort of you're sort of kept on edge throughout the whole thing. That it's sort of like it's taking you down different paths all the time, and they're very unexpected.
Yeah.
I think that's what I mean by psychedelic.
Yeah.
Because it's their first album has the daisies on it, and it sort of looks like a day glow 1960s hippie stuff, and people called it hippie rap.
You called them something hippie earlier. I was going to say they'd be pissed about that.
Right. Well,
it was Daisy. It was an acronym for the inner sound, y'all.
Right. But
that's why the cover of this album is a crushed daisy.
Yeah, they were sort of running from that image in this album, and in later interviews they regard this album, De La Soul Is Dead, which is in the title, as like a bitter album. They're like, this is bitter and angry, and because they were trying to get away from their sort of sunshine positive rap thing that they were doing in their
and their first album was super successful, right?
Yeah,
and they were trying to live down what they created.
Yeah, you know what's funny is, like, I have one of my funniest experiences I ever had on the subway in New York City. That people rap on the subway, like people will, and they break dance on the subway. They do performances.
That's what I mean. I've done that many times.
Yeah. That's how I cut my teeth, is rapping on the subway. No, but
that's how I lost my teeth.
Like a lot of people will say
shit beat out of me.
The breakdancers will do this thing. They'll say showtime, and like they start doing a show, and then they pass their hat around and try to get money.
Yeah,
a lot of like white people, especially older people, would like roll their eyes and just hate it when the showtime happened. I kind of liked it. Like, some of these people were really great performers.
Yeah,
and a lot of the breakdancers did these like gymnastic performances where they're like spinning around on the bars and like they're hanging above you and shit. Unbelievable shit. But there's also like some sad performers, because ultimately this is busking, right? This is like a form of entertainment where you're just sort of like on the street trying to get money from people, like almost like you're begging. But there was this older black dude on the subway who announced to everyone that he was going to rap, and he had this sort of attitude, this sort of mopey, sad attitude, and he said, "I'm going to do a rap for you folks," and he was an older guy, and he's like, "And I'm going to do it with a positive message, and I don't use no cursing." And there were these younger black kids because I used to ride all the way up through Harlem and into Washington Heights, and I was so often the only white guy on the subway. These younger black kids who had their phones out, and they were like goofing on him. They were like laughing as he was doing this, like, "My name is Jay, and I'd like to say I like to rap in an old school way." And it was like really like there was something really pathetic about it. But it also like I was like, oh, this is so painful to watch, and it was partly painful because the kids were goofing on him. They were like laughing and had their phones and
Poor
were trying to
Jay.
like and I was like, this is generational, you know,
Oh,
in
yeah.
its attitude. What I love this, I told this story because I wanted to connect it to De La Soul. De La Soul are doing like a positive rap thing in a world where NWA and Ice Cube we already talked about, they're dominating. Like
Yeah.
they're still like the attitude in rap, the dominant attitude in rap is a macho attitude, is a fuck you kind of attitude, is, you know, as we said, misogynist, violent. It's real beat in your chest. De La Soul come in there and they're like, we're gonna do something a little different. They took a little bravery to do what they did.
Yeah, I would agree.
But also they remain cool and edgy. They're not dorky. They're not like, oh, this is like lame or stupid. They actually are cool. And I think that that's a really, really vital thing because it happens in rock too, is they offered models of how to be cool and hip without being a shithead about it.
Well,
And like
yeah.
that was cool to me. That's what I like about
Without being toxic and well,
Yeah.
maybe it's toxic. You know,
they're like funny and good spirited, you know,
but
and without
they-
being like they're not churchy,
but they're
not
capable of
preachy.
they're capable of heaviness too.
Yeah.
They have a song on this record. It's my standout song for the record. Millie pulled a pistol on Santa.
Yes.
I was at the gym.
Mm-hmm.
I stopped working out to listen to the story.
Yeah.
I rewound it. But I needed it. It was so interesting. First of all, the way it's rapped in within the rhythm of the song. Once again, space. The way he raps to just the end of the phrase, and I thought it was just brilliantly done. And the storytelling and the rhyming and it's really great. I
Yeah.
was very impressed.
Yeah.
And it's heavy. It's not, you know, it's about a guy that it was a friend of his who he found out was molesting his daughter.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
there's a track on here that's called "What My Brother's a Basshead,"
Yeah.
which is a song about like it could be called like "Don't Do Crack," you know,
Yeah.
which was a big thing in the '90s,
Yeah.
you know, and a big thing in hip hop too. And like, there's still like, speaking of New York, I used to pass these murals that were from the 80s and 90s that were still sort of crumbling on the walls, painted murals that were like, "Don't do crack, crack is whack," all that kind
I
of
have
shit.
a scar right here. I got stabbed buying crack in Vegas in 1998.
Beautiful.
That's not a joke.
Right. Well,
story.
don't do crack, kids. But, you know, an anti-drug song has the potential to be very corny. But this song, My Brother's a Basshead, is sort of funny and weird, and it's got a very particular tone where he's like, my stupid brother, you know, getting involved in this
High
stuff.
since you were 19. Yeah, so
Right.
getting high when
And
you were
it's
19, yeah.
and it's a really bracing and, you know, heavy song about losing your brother to drugs. But it's
Heavy.
also just De La Soul have such a unique tone. They're doing to me like a high wire act in hip hop. And I can't say enough about how much I like this album.
I like the album a lot too,
Yeah.
and that song. So first of all, I said Tom Waits looms this month.
Yeah.
Did you know that they Oodles of O's? That's a bass line from a song called Diamonds on My Windshield, which is a Tom Waits song off an early album that came out in the 70s called The Heart of Saturday Night.
Who would do that in hip hop? Like, I could be wrong here, but like, did Ice Cube know who Tom Waits was? You know what I mean? Like, it seems like
I don't know.
It's like a different world.
But
like,
this shows their jazz roots, because not that Tom Waits is considered a jazz artist,
he's
but
in there though. Like,
his early stuff, the Asylum years, you know,
Right.
He does a lot of stuff with a jazz combo.
Right.
Even though he's doing piano songwriter stuff, he's got a stand-up bass. And that song Diamonds on My Windshield, it's just a stand-up bass. He's kind of almost rapping. Diamonds on my windshield,
Yeah.
like tears from heaven.
Well,
I'm rolling into town
You
on the
said,
interstate.
you know,
I got
yeah,
a steel team in the rain. He's just talking. It's like beat poetry over the stand-up bass.
he's
you know?
half a hip hop artist. In
He
a lot of
is.
ways,
In a-
you know?
He is. He
And
is.
so the album, we'll get to it, but Real Gone, the
Yeah.
Red album,
Yeah.
that album drives my mother-in-law crazy, because my father-in-law is my Claudia's dad is a huge Tom Waits fan, and he'll put on Real Gone and she'll be like, turn it off. She hates it because it's so like heavy and hard. He's rapping in that album.
Yeah.
Like, it's incredible.
I've got a couple of funny stories about that, but I'll save it for when we talk about Tom, because we're going to.
Yeah,
but,
well, he's another figure that, like Neil Young, is kind of he's more in the background, but he's sort of looming around the 90s a lot.
very influential. Everybody respects Tom Waits. He's one of those guys who did it his own way for 3 decades. One more thing, like you said about the humor when there's a line in this, I laughed so hard when he's like, y'all doing R&B. R&B, mean rhythm and blues? No, rapping bullshit. You know what I'm talking
Yes,
about? That's I love that.
Yep.
They don't feel the need to rap all the time. Sometimes they're just talking in the song.
Yeah.
Playing characters, talking shit.
There's a lot of space.
Yeah,
and
there's a lot of space.
that's when maybe this again with the space thing, but also just the psychedelic element. You're kind of like this album. Like if you have it on the background, you might like all of a sudden be like, what the fuck am I listening to? You know, like where am I? I'm in some like this is some like weird radio show that's been beamed in from another planet.
Yeah.
And yet they're talking about just like, you know, driving around hitting on girls at Burger King and shit like that. Like there's something so cool about it.
And you know, I remember thinking that De La Soul was like one of those pop groups, like Cameo.
Well, the name kind of is
yeah.
misleading.
You know, I thought I was when I saw this album come, I went and looked like to see if I recognized what their hit was.
Yeah.
You know, like I really did. I thought of them like in the like Cameo or Boys to Men or something.
Right.
I just knew nothing about them.
Yeah.
And so it was such a surprise to listen to the record.
Cool. I'm glad you enjoyed it. I thought you would, honestly, because you liked Gangstar, and that's in the trajectory of like this jazz rap.
Yeah, I really liked this record.
Okay, so moving on, in May 1991 was also the debut, major label debut, but second studio album by a band whose first album was on my top 10 of 1990. This is a band called Primus. The album is appropriately enough as a commercial debut called "Sailing the Seas of Cheese," and this is more Primus. It sounded like a continuation of Frizzle Fry in a lot of ways. They're another band where it's like their sound is unique. Like if you put on 3 bars of Primus music, I know it's Primus.
Yeah.
Even if Les Claypool isn't singing, because it's
his bass playing. Yeah.
Right. It's his bass playing.
No, that you're right.
Yeah. But I get a lot of joy out of the Primus albums. I liked this.
So you know Primus, as you know, I was into them back then. I saw them play in a small club once. I wanted to say it was in Berkeley Square, but maybe I'm misremembering that. But I was a huge Primus fan back when this album came out, and I think that since we've already talked about them once, we're gonna talk about them again. I think this is an appropriate time to talk about Interscope Records.
Okay.
Because this is a huge part of 90s history.
Yeah.
So Primus, they're like Rush meets Zappa. They're an East Bay band. You know, he went to school with Kirk Hammett. He auditioned for Metallica, famously, you know. Didn't get the gig because he didn't I heard him talk about this. They called him in. Cliff Burton saw his band play and must have raved about him because right after Cliff Burton died, Kirk Hammett, who he'd gone to high school with, you know, he said Kirk Hammett used to sit behind him and go, "Hey Claypool, check out this guitar I'm gonna get." Like, you know, they knew each other. He was a year older than him. That's called him.
And they both become legends in their own way.
Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so they called him and asked him to come and audition, and he had no idea how big Metallica was.
Right.
And so he shows up and he's not just walking in a room with those guys. He had to like go meet their handlers and be told what to do. And he's kind of intimidated. And he's like, I've got my big wooden bass. And so they said, let's play Ride the Lightning. And he's like, cool. And he said, I didn't know that opening riff was a bass riff. So I just stood there. And he said, finally, James Hetfield like shook his head and he played it.
Yeah.
And they went into it. So he didn't get the gig. But
probably better for Primus and Metallica, honestly.
So I want to make sure I get all my notes in here. Where am I? Let me get onto my notes. So Interscope is this super hip record label in the early 90s. So it's worth telling the story of Interscope because they're one of the bands that got on Interscope, and that was a label like we would have all killed to be on Interscope. They kind of became, in the 80s, there were all these cool underground labels, IRS, Slash Records. These are all distributed, had pretty good distribution, but they were sort of indie labels, you know? And then bands started getting signed, you know? Husker Du and Replacements got signed to Warner Brothers. Sire Records, which was a Warner subsidiary, and REM gets signed to some big. I think it was Warner Brothers too. I'm not going to be right about that, but anyway, all these bands were listening started getting record deals. We're thinking, well, we could get record deal. Some of my good friends, Toad Duet Sprocket, in 1988, got signed to Columbia Records. They're from Santa Barbara. Like, oh shit! So what's possible changes in our minds, and then this new label comes out called Interscope, and it was Jimmy Iovine, who is a legendary producer, worked with like, Bruce Springsteen and all these famous artists, and then this guy Tom Wally, who is and a guy named Fields, I forget his last name. Those two guys started Interscope, and I think I got that in my notes in here somewhere. But
I can find it for you.
yeah, it's Ted Fields.
Ted Field.
Ted Fields and Jimmy Iovine really started that label, and they got Tom Wally and this other guy named John McCain, who are these legendary music guys. And their first hit album was Gerardo, Rico Suave.
No way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then they release they start working with like they brought out 9 Inch Nails, and they signed Primus. Like the same year, Marky Mark and the Fresh Bunch, the same year they signed Primus, they did a record with Mark and the Funky Bunch, whatever they were. Yeah. So
it's very important.
All over the place.
That you get that correct. Yeah.
Sorry, Mark. The Marky. Where is that guy now? By the way,
he hates bringing that up, when people bring that up. Actually,
I would if I were him too. So Interscope becomes this very influential label. Like I said, they do 9 Inch Nails, they do No Doubt, and it becomes a very sought after independent label, among other things. They also did some incredible partnerships within the hip hop world. They did the Tupac Shakur album. He was on their label.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think of Interscope as doing hip hop albums too.
Very strong in the hip hop world, but they were this fucking cool label that became like they were part of Atlantic. So they had global distribution. In fact, their relationship with hip hop, the hip hop world, caused Atlantic to want to distance themselves.
Interesting.
And they sold them back there. So Interscope became their own entity after that. But the fact that they went on to Interscope, and Les Claypool said they were playing a gig in San Francisco, and Tom Wally came there to see another band and saw them play. He said he didn't know anything about them. They sold like 80,000 copies of Frizzle Fry on their own, right?
Yeah.
They were getting like 1,000 people showing up at their gigs, and they were happy doing what they were doing. And they had a chance to go on tour with Nirvana. They turned it down. They wanted to do their own tour.
That's funny.
And Les was like, I wish we wouldn't have done that. But this guy Tom Wally shows up from Interscope and just saw them play, just happened to see them play. He said he knew nothing about us. And he just said, he came backstage and said, my name's Tom, I'm with Interscope Records, and I want to sign you guys to a record deal. And there were other labels leaving them messages on their answer machine and stuff, and their manager was like, we should maybe try. And Les said, no, I wanted to go with Interscope because that guy was sold on us, offered us a deal solely based on seeing us play one show.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what Interscope was doing back then. They were that's how they came to be on an independent label. And by the way, he said he loved their time in Interscope up until the Brown album. Anyway, they let them do whatever they want.
That's really interesting. It's funny because they sound. You mentioned Rush and Zappa, and I think those are important, like the prog rock thing, and also the kind of weird comedic thing they're
funny,
doing. Yeah.
Weird. And this is, once again, like I was saying, those ideas that people were trying. Les said on the first couple albums, there's a couple songs where he sang into a cup.
Yeah.
He's just trying to get a sound.
Right.
He said something very interesting. He goes, I didn't ever see myself as a singer of our songs. I saw myself as a narrator of our songs.
Interesting.
And when he says that, don't you go, oh yeah.
Yeah, that totally makes sense.
And he
doesn't sing a whole lot.
They all these label people, and he said even some people at Interscope were like, hey, did you ever think about just getting a singer?
Yeah.
Like, no.
Yeah.
Same thing happened to Rush, by the way. Geddy Lee said people used to say, well, why don't you guys get a singer? Your voice is so weird and high.
It makes me think about Zappa, too, in terms of Zappa's singing, because a lot of what Zappa's doing, he does... A lot of his stuff is tongue in cheek.
Oh,
a lot of it is just sort of like he's doing an affect. He's not
or like
taking
a cheesy
seriously.
Lounge, like you said,
Yeah,
Joe.
right.
I'm a dancing fool.
Yeah, it almost
Yeah.
almost makes you feel like, what if Zappa had taken himself seriously at some point? Because I
wouldn't have been Zappa.
like a lot of the Zappa the funny songs. But they're kind of like, I wonder what else he could have done, because there's times when he plays his guitar, because I think of Zappa as one of the big guitar gods, like where he hints at something deeper, at something a little more, a little richer. But he wouldn't be Zappa, I guess, if he weren't doing that funny thing. And the toilet humor. I mean, he has songs about boogers and shit like that. You know what I mean? It's just like you always in a way, there's a sense to me that a lot Zappa undermines his own music a lot of times.
Sure.
With that approach. But what I was going to say is that along with Rush, when I hear Primus, I hear Tool. They sound like Tool with a sense of humor to me. Because Tool has no sense of humor.
No.
Tool, and that I think that's a strength of Tool. Actually, they're like their music is pulverizing, and their message.
Fucking love Tool.
Their message is always just like fuck, man, heavy as shit. Whereas with Primus, they bring undeniable like musicianship. Like the music is so fucking intricate,
ridiculous.
Like it's unbelievable, honestly. Like their music is stunning, but then it's also got this like really funny, weird approach. I mean, their big songs, like on this one, is like what Jerry was a race car driver, Tommy the Cat, and like, you know, there's a song on here called Sergeant Baker, where he's basically inhabiting the character from Full Metal Jacket, of like
steers and queers, steers and queers,
exactly that type of stuff. There's another, you know, both of us, you and I, chose that song "Too Many Puppies" as like a really cool take on an anti-war idea, and it seems like they're playing with that here again with politics. There's a song on here called "American Life" that's literally about immigration and the sort of like sad irony of immigration and the shitty lives that people inhabit in America, even though everyone wants it. I just think they're doing a lot of really important and funny and weird and heavy stuff on this album.
Speaking of that song "American Life," because the music is just this constant barrage of chaos that should not work.
Like their bass sounds like Tool to me. Like they're kind of like really it's busy, but it's not, the busyness isn't distracting. It actually it adds something frenetic and insane to the groove.
It's just chaos. I don't even know how it's possible to do it. He did it. I saw him talk to Rick Beato about how he came to be a bass player.
Yeah.
And he said that one of the reasons he didn't want to be a guitar player was it sounded like, he said, I saw these bands playing. It was kind of like, I don't want to do that. It's all high pitched and weird. And he said he thought the bass was sultry and smooth. And so he started playing the bass, and then he got a ton of work because nobody wanted to be a bass player. Everybody wanted to be Eddie Van Halen.
Funny,
you know.
Yeah.
So he was in a band right away.
An opportunity there.
But the way that he approaches that instrument is fucking unreal. That song "American Life," no other bass player nobody that I know of could even play that song, much less create it.
Yeah, right.
I just don't. I don't understand. And then not just him, all of them. The way those three guys, Tim Alexander, or Herb as Les calls him, Larry Lalonde, and Les Claypool, the original three guys in Primus, the way they found the way they clicked together as a musical unit, it's freakish.
Yeah.
They're and I even think that they're more impressive in Rush in that way than Rush in that way, because in Rush, Alex Lifeson knows he's a rhythm guitar player. He plays his solos, but mostly he's holding down a landscape of rhythm for Geddy Lee to be the busy instrument. And of course, Neil is busy. But Larry Lalonde is playing crazy, freaky shit throughout his sense of time and his, all of them are just freakish. There's just lunacy going on here.
Yeah.
So no other rock band could have used Tom Waits so well. He's perfect. He fits in perfect for Tommy the Cat.
Right.
The voice of Tommy the Cat. The opening of those damn Blue Collar Tweakers.
Yes.
That's not guitar playing.
Mm-hmm.
That is, like I said, that's the sound of anxiety, murder, and peril created through an amp somehow. I don't know how they do it. And there's just such innovation. I'm so impressed with Primus. I love them. They once again, like they wanted them to work with a producer on this album, and they said no. They brought back the guy who ran the board for them on Frizzle Fry, who, by the way, when they did Frizzle Fry, the guy was still in high school. Like, he's this young guy, and he came in.
Wow.
And they just,
They're geniuses.
Yeah.
We have some geniuses
we do.
on this list.
We do. Jimmy Iovine didn't get them. He said he told them in the studio, look, I don't get you, but Tom Whalley gets you, and I get Tom Whalley, so do your thing.
The kids love it. Well, I mean, what I think about Primus too is sort of like they're such outliers. They're such outcasts and weirdos within even the larger world of 90s music and 90s rock. They're singular.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
There's a lot of alternative rock that sounds generally the same that you might be like, oh, okay, I don't, this band sounds like another band. But with Primus,
nobody sounds like
that. It reminds me of how in the 70s, I mean, it's kind of a legendary time in Hollywood movies where Hollywood, for whatever reason, there's a lot of economic and cultural reasons why Hollywood started funding weird filmmakers to make their own visions. And it ended up producing a really unique time in the history of movies because they were adventurous. And it feels like the music industry, as you described, Interscope, was adventurous here in supporting what Primus was doing, because who likes this music? They're not going, even though they're amazing and they're, I think, well known partly because of South Park. Like, they don't seem like they're topping the charts.
This album was platinum.
Yeah, okay. So they did well.
They did pretty well.
That Jerry in itself is amazing, though.
Jerry was a race car driver. There was an appetite for this in the 90s. Like what you're talking about. So is the
public too. It's not just like the companies that are forcing this upon the public. The public are into it.
There was an appetite for it. Remember, we're going to talk about them. There's a band that's going to come out called Presidents of the United States of America.
Yes.
I knew the drummer, Jason.
She's lump.
Millions of peaches. This was a time, as you said, like same thing with De La Soul. Pop culture had become aware of itself in the 90s.
Yeah.
And jokes and fun and goofy things, there was an appetite.
You're right.
And Jerry was a race car driver. The reason that's the song that Primus broke through with. Like, Jerry was a race car driver. Drove so goddamn fast. Never did earn no checkered flag, but I never did come in last. Like, that's funny. You're laughing when I do it.
Yeah.
It's something you immediately go, oh my God, what is this?
It's like a twisted cartoon. It reminds me of, remember Spike and Mike's Twisted Animation Festival?
The Sick and Twisted Animation Festival.
I mean, let's talk about...
First time I saw Beavis and Butthead.
That's what I was going to say. South Park, Beavis and Butthead, The Simpsons. There's something cartoonish about that's present in the culture in the 90s.
Right, yeah.
That not only in literal cartoons, but in the kind of the kind of wacky, weird approach to everything.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And that's where Primus fits in. And they saw themselves. So there's this music scene in the Northeast Bay, in San Francisco Bay, right? East Bay music scene, and that's where Metallica came out of, and it's Primus, Faith No More, but they saw themselves, according to Les, as part of a world beat scene. They did not see themselves as part of that rock scene. And then they were also, just like you said, outliers and weirdos. You know what the name? They have a great story about how they got the name Primus.
No, I don't know it.
They were called Primate.
Huh.
The first song it's so near and dear to my heart that their first album they called Primate. They did it with an 8-track. They sat in the room, and that's how we used to make records. And everything's played live. So cool. Do you know in 1990 they toured with Jane's Addiction and the Pixies?
Wow.
That would have been something to see.
So it seems like in the alternative culture, people recognize them.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
So they're called Primate. And he said they're starting to get like a little bit of radio play in the East Bay, where it's this thriving music scene and people are playing on the radio. And they get a call from this guy. And he says, I represent the band, the Primates. Yeah. And this is a cease and desist notice. I will be sending you a letter. So he said they just went, oh, fuck, we got to change our name. So he said they looked up Primate and saw that it was derived from the Latin root primus. And they said, oh, we'll go with that.
That's great. That's the same thing that happened to Dinosaur Jr.
So listen to this.
Yeah.
30 years later at a VIP event, Les says a guy came up to him and was like, hey, man, I'm a big fan. And by the way, I'm the guitar player in this band. I was the guitar player in this band called the Primates. And Les is like, shut up. Your attorney called us and gave us a cease and desist. That's how we got our name. And he goes, that was me.
That's great.
Isn't that great?
That was me. I'm representing the band.
Yeah. Bullshit.
Do you have a standout song for sailing the seas of cheese?
I do.
Yeah.
And let me explain why. My standout song is Sergeant Baker. Because it's going to give you the reason for the standout song is if you're watching this and what we've said, it interests you about this artist, but you've never heard it before and you only want to just like get a taste. That's why I choose a standout song, so you don't have to listen to the whole record. This will give you a taste of Primus without asking too much of you.
Yeah.
Primus is not easy to listen to.
No.
It's not for everybody. And so I think Sgt. Baker, it's short enough, it's interesting enough, it'll give you a taste of, oh, this is what Primus is without asking too much of you.
Yeah, and it's the cousin of Too Many Puppies in some way. Yeah.
First song they ever wrote.
Yeah,
you know that?
thematically and just sound-wise. Yeah, I mean, just like Zappa, it's an acquired taste. You know, it's funny that you talk about Primus being popular and selling a lot, because I'm like, who listens to Primus? But I guess they're still very well known.
Do you know they went on tour? They did.
They're so fucking weird.
They opened for U2 on the Zoo tour.
That's crazy to me.
Tour.
That is weird to me. Wow. Yeah. Okay.
Crazy, right?
Yeah. Okay. So we got one last album we want to think about. That came out in May 1991. Shifting gears very much so from everything else we've listened to. I think
very different.
It was like I love at the end of this list. You have an Elvis Costello album. Now, Elvis Costello, this is his 13th studio album, and he has a million albums from like collaborations with other people.
A million.
I mean, this
albums.
guy is a prolific. Singer-songwriter, and British guy. He's sort of a big figure in hip culture, I feel like, in a lot of ways. Like, I know a lot of Elvis Costello fans. Now, I will just preface this by saying I am not an Elvis Costello fan.
You told me that, yeah.
Someone dragged me to an Elvis Costello show at the Kodak Theater in L.A., in Hollywood.
When?
Probably 2002.
Okay.
Yeah, in 2002.
The bloom was off the rose then.
Yeah, but what's funny is I used to dress up always to go to concerts, and so I was wearing I had a vintage brown suit that was like sort of plaid brown suit, and you know I wear these glasses, these sort of Elvis Costello glasses, and I had on a pork pie hat, and people were Elvis as I was walking in, because I you know, even though I don't like Elvis Costello's music, I guess I sort of like aped his style a little bit. But yeah, there's something, you talk about a grating voice. His voice bothers me. His music bothers me. But I know that you respect him, so I want to hear you justify that, and see if I respect your opinion at all.
When I was a young man, I had a holy trinity of songwriters. Mm-hmm. This is in the 80s when I was like in my late teens. Okay.
Was Weird Al one of them?
No, that's now.
Yeah.
Oddly enough, now my holy trinity is Weird Al, and Weird Al. No, so
in that order,
my holy trinity of songwriters was Elvis Costello, Tom Waits, and Bob Dylan. Like, he was, in my opinion, one of the greatest songwriters of all time. I guess you don't like women. Jesus Christ. Continued. It's not my fault they don't write any good songs.
Come on, ladies. Where I'm looking at you, Joni Mitchell. Yeah. Joni Mitchell is, I've told you, these guys, the guys that I respect the most, you know, the Neil Youngs and the Bob Dylans, they worship at the altar of Joni Mitchell.
Well, rightly so. I mean, oh God, I mean, we should do a whole thing just on women songwriters who are just fucking monster songwriters. Yeah. But anyway, I mean, you know, one of my favorite songwriters and singers and people of all time is Chrissy Hynde and Bjork.
Dude, Nico Case.
God, I love Nico Case.
Yeah, we're going to get to her. I think she shows up in the 90s,
great.
right? Or,
late 90s, I think, yeah. She's also in a great band called the New Pornographers. Have you heard them?
Oh, yeah.
I love that band.
It was New Pornographers were my entryway into Nico Case. And then she has an album called Furnace Room Lullaby that I think is, to me, it's one of my top albums of all time, like of any genre.
Really?
Yeah.
Furnace Room Lullaby?
Furnace Room Lullaby. We're not talking about that album. That album is amazing.
We'll get yet.
Let's talk about Elvis Costello and why it's just awful.
If you if you are out there, shameless Nico, if you're watching, she has a new album called Neon Gray Midnight Green.
Yes,
came out this year.
Yeah,
it's fucking great.
Yeah,
I love that record. It's really good.
Yeah, she's one of the best.
I love her. So Elvis was a very important figure to me as a young man, as a songwriter. Now, if you know his body of work, I will also say this about my former hero. I don't think he's made a great album since 1989.
Oh wow. Okay.
He wrote, in fact, this album comes on the heels. So back in the late 70s, he was like the hit maker of the British new wave scene.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Allison, Watching the Detectives, what else? Pump It Up, Radio. He had a lot of big hit songs. And then he made he made these great records, Taking Liberties, My Aim Is True, Armed Forces, Imperial Bedroom. And then he makes like a fucking country album called Almost Blue. It's a country album.
He plays with genre for sure, right?
Oh, he does whatever he wants. Imperial Bedroom is a chamber, like it's all orchestrations.
Yeah.
It's with a full symphony. You know, he is an artist, but I will say that most of his great work, in my opinion, was done with the band The Attractions.
Mm-hmm.
Bruce Thomas, Steve Naive, Pete Thomas, incredible band, and that'll be important in a moment. So. In the late 80s, he jettisoned, they did an album called Goodbye Cruel World, and he's done with The Attractions. And that album has one of his big hits on it. Every day, I write the book. You ever heard that song?
No, but I hate it.
Okay. He made an album that
I'm being so unfair. I'm sorry.
He made an album after that called King of America, which is my favorite Elvis Costello album ever. No one ever heard it. It's the first album he made after The Attractions were gone. They play on a couple of the songs, and he uses a couple of musicians who play with Elvis Presley, Jerry Sheff, and those guys are on this record.
He collaborates with like a lot of huge singers, songwriters, artists.
Paul McCartney wrote 2 songs on this record with him.
I know he did, and I paid attention to that because I love Paul McCartney. I think he's one of the great. He would be on my list of greatest songwriters.
He would disagree with your assessment of Elvis Costello.
Yeah, I think he would.
He would.
Well, he's written. I learned more than 10 songs they've recorded, and even more than that, I think they
call
haven't.
themselves the 2 Max.
Right, and then there's he wrote a lot with Burt Bacharach, and a million others. And this is the thing for me. There's just like you've talked about this with other artists. There's some sort of big block where you're like, I'm just not. I'm not getting into it. It doesn't work for me for whatever reason. It should work for me because again, like I said. Elvis Costello, I look at him like, this is like this accomplished singer-songwriter that comes from like the kind of punk world of like Great Britain in the 80s, and like there's something always seemed really cool about him, but I just can't get into it. And like the 2 songs that he does with McCartney on here, So Like Candy and Playboy to a Man, I was like, oh, these are like these songs from like these sound like deleted songs from Ram or some of McCartney's solo albums that are a little I don't know. George Harrison has some really bad stuff too, where I'm just sort of like they don't work for me, and I say that as recognizing that they do work for a lot of people. I think that people probably will disagree with me and really enjoy this album, but I didn't.
This record is not Elvis Costello at his best or at his worst.
Okay,
for sure.
Yeah.
So
it's mid Costello.
This is a specific, in my opinion, this is how I break this down. This is a 2 record period for Elvis Costello. The album before this was called Spike, and it had a song called Veronica on it. It was a pretty big hit. You know that song?
Yes.
And I believe Paul McCartney co-wrote that song with him.
Wow.
If I'm not mistaken. I would fact check that on
McCartney's like, my back hurts from carrying Elvis Costello all these years.
And then so Spike... And then this album, Mighty Like a Rose, came out in succession. And this album has a song on it called "The Other Side of Summer" that was a number 1 hit on modern rock.
It's kind of aping the Beach Boys sound a
little bit, yeah. And it's about the environmental disaster. But these 2 albums, these are the Spike much more so than Mighty Like a Rose, but in this 2-album era, I think he's under the influence of Tom Waits. So I told you Waits looms over this.
Right.
De La Soul sampled him. He's on the Primus album. He's using Mark Ribot, Tom Waits' guitar player, on a lot of his iconic stuff in the 80s, like Rain Dogs, Swordfish Trombones. What else? Frank's Wild Years. Like Mark Ribot is this avant jazz New York guitar player that he uses for a lot of his stuff. But on Spike, the album before, he had Larry, what's the guy, the bass player, Tom Waits' bass player. He sort of copped Tom Waits' band. Let me tell you a funny story. In on New Year's Eve. So I told you this story last when we were talking about Pearl Jam. I told you on New Year's Eve 1991 and 92, I was in San Francisco seeing the Red Hot Chili Peppers at the Cow Palace.
Yes.
And Nirvana and Pearl Jam opened for them. And by the way, Les Claypool, just heard him last night on an interview say he was at that show. He goes, I saw Nirvana open for the Chili Peppers at the Cow Palace way back when. I'm like, oh, I was at that same show. So that's 91,
You breathe
92.
the same air as all those people.
So 91 New Year's Eve.
Yep.
I'm once again in San Francisco the year
is
before.
This when you jump on stage with Tom Waits? Yes.
At the Orpheum Theater. Okay. And Tom Waits is playing, and we're there to see him. We're in line, and in line behind us is Elvis Costello with his then wife, Kate O'Riordan of the Pogues, the bass player of the Pogues.
Yeah.
Remember, he produced Rum Sodomy and the Lash, and they were married for a while. So Rum Sodomy and Lash is a Pogues album that Elvis Costello produced. So he's there with Kate O'Riordan, standing right behind us. And my brother goes, I think Elvis Costello's behind us. So we all kind of huddle up and go, we're going to play it cool. And I'm kind of drunk. And I'm kind of going, what? And then while they're huddling about playing it cool, four of my friends, I turn around and shout, are you Elvis Costello?
So cool.
So cool.
Yeah.
Fucking idiot. And all my friends are like, but he was very gracious and he spoke to us. And yes, that night I did go to the show and I jumped up on stage and hugged Tom Waits.
I wish there were video of that.
Me too.
Yeah.
And if I ever meet Tom Waits, I'm going to go up to him and say, I'm the guy who jumped up on stage and hugged you. And he's going to remember me because nobody ever jumps on stage at a Tom Waits concert. I've seen him 3 times, the very sedate audience. But anyway, Elvis was in the audience that night. And I'm convinced he was there to poach Tom Waits' band. Because after
Larry
that,
Taylor is the name of the bassist.
That's him.
Yeah.
Right after that, Larry Taylor, Mark Ribot, and maybe the percussionist were on Spike. And then Mark Ribot was on this record. So this is his under the influence of Tom Waits, and he doesn't do a great job of it.
That's funny. Yeah.
You know, it's Tom Waits light. And then I also think this is a very Beatles-influenced album.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. But that, obviously there's a billion Beatles influenced albums. Of
course.
You could do it a million different ways.
But his
like
early
some of it's
stuff with
better
the
than others.
attractions, that's his legendary stuff. It's not Beatlesy at all.
Right.
Not at all. So I think he's under the influence of a couple of things here that drag him down. He's also using Larry Knechtel and Jerry Sheff, who are Elvis Presley's bass player and drummer.
Interesting.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
So he produced this album, with some help. T-Bone Burnett is on there too as a producer. But it's very overwrought. He needed an editor. You've talked a lot in this podcast about space.
Yeah.
There's no fucking space on this
album.
Every
It's
song is
just
jammed
driving
full
the whole
of
time.
It's like the song Invasion Hit Parade.
Yeah.
Like that is such an overwrought song. He says Invasion Hit Parade 20 times in a backing vocal and a 5-part harmony. Invasion Hit Parade, the Invasion Hit Parade, Invasion. It's just, okay, we get it. Stop. Like it beats you over the head. It's overwrought.
Yeah.
So I get that.
I find him, his voice and sort of his music really obnoxious. Like when I put it on in the background, I'm like, what is that? Turn it off. It's agitating to me. You know what I mean? And that voice that you just did, that's the voice that bothers me. That kind of yeah. There's something about Elvis Costello. Maybe one day I'm gonna be like, you know what? I'm in my Elvis Costello era now, and I totally get it. That's happened with other artists for sure, but I'm not in it now.
Well, if he wears that song, that singing, radio is a South salvation.
Yeah.
He wears that like a badge. He's unapologetically singing like that. So if you don't like that, I don't know if you'll ever like it.
It's not going to work, yeah.
But if you do want to get an Elvis Costello, his body of work from like 76 to 88 is fantastic with the Attractions and King of America. That is wonderful music. Armed Forces, Taking Liberties. Those are great albums with so many good songs on them.
Did you have a standout song on this album?
There's a few. I think there are moments. This is another thing too. This is not a 90s album at all.
No.
But Elvis is kind of his own thing at this point. But he's one of those artists he's just doing what he wants to do. He's not paying attention.
There's no one in Seattle, in the Seattle sound, who are like, Elvis Costello is who I'm making Nevermind based on Elvis
No.
Costello.
In fact,
You know?
in terms of what's happening in America anyway, in mainstream music, he's going the wrong direction.
Yeah.
For sure. But there are some moments like All Grown Up
Mm-hmm.
is a beautiful anti-torch song. And I say anti-torch like it's a beautiful song.
Yeah.
There's some great moments on here. There's a song called my standout song, and I want to talk about this song a little bit. It's called Couldn't Call It Unexpected No. 4.
Mm-hmm.
It's the last song on the record.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a carnival waltz.
Yeah.
It's got a banjo and a harmonium and a tuba and it's a very interesting song, and it's one of the most haunting melodies I've ever heard in my life. Did you listen to it?
I'll have to listen to it again now because I didn't catch it. I'll listen to it again. Yeah.
I'm going to convince you that
Yeah.
you got a guitar pick, dude.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm going to convince you that while you don't care for him, he is capable of absolutely great composition. This song goes, I'm going to just sing this and you tell me if this isn't great. I might fuck it up.
Yeah.
Who on earth is tapping at the window? Does that face still linger at the pane? I saw you shiver though the room was like a furnace. The shadow of regret across a young mother's face. So toll the bell and rock the cradle. Please don't let me feel anything I cannot explain. I can't believe I'll never believe in anything again. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, it's good.
That's a beautiful composition.
Yeah.
So he is
It's a little wordy for me. I have a few notes.
okay.
It's packed.
That's my next question for you.
Yeah.
Because I'm one of those guys. We've talked about this a lot. Thanks for indulging me on that.
Sure. Yeah,
But
no, I love it.
when you told me that you hate him or whatever you said to him, I'm like, I'm going to play that for him. He has to admit that that's a good composition.
Yeah, and I totally understand the feeling of like talking to someone who a friend that doesn't get your music, and you're like, you got to hear what I hear in this.
But
I
don't-
always long for that too, because I'm always like, what am I missing? What am I missing here that someone else really loves this and I don't love it?
Well, you have no taste or talent. No, listen. If you said I love this guy and gave me this record, I would not have that high of an opinion of him.
Yeah, I hear you.
But I will.
This is not the best.
I will tell you.
That's a cool song though.
So the melody and the composition is wonderful. But I will tell you. You said something, and I think you're making a good assessment. He is verbose.
Yes.
And I've told you that I'm weird. Most people get to lyrics in a song. I start there. Tons of my friends that are great musicians, they're like, yeah, I hear the beat first and the melody. Like they get to the lyrics later.
Yeah.
And most listeners obviously don't care that much about lyrics. If you listen to pop music over the last 50 years, it's obvious that lyrics are not that important.
Yeah.
But to me, they're the first thing I do. And he can really turn a phrase. He's very good with imagery, but he is wordy and verbose. And if you don't like that, you're not going to like Elvis Costello.
I think I mentioned that about the Soul Asylum album too. I was
Yeah,
like, God,
yeah.
there's just,
Yeah.
and it has something to do with space for me. Like I like a minimal approach, and I'm a lyric guy too. And I love, we'll get to in the 90s. I mean, there are some lyrics become important in the 90s. I think the
Very
90s
much
are
so.
a very poetic time.
It is.
But I feel like this is kind of a subjective taste thing, as there's a sort of like things that resonate with you and things that don't. But one of the things that's always bothered me about Elvis Costello's music is like, this guy never shuts the fuck up. It's just like so much words packed in here, and I would love to hear Elvis Costello album that's sort of a little more minimal. I also feel like he clearly would have the ability, and maybe he's done it, to put out instrumental albums, to put out albums that are much more just the music, because he's married to Diana Krall, who is
For a long
a
time, yeah.
jazz
Jazz singer,
pianist
yeah.
and singer. And it's clear that he has a longing or an interest in other forms of music other than just this sort of like singer-songwriter stuff. Like he's put out albums that are a little more in the jazz mode or something like that.
For sure.
Yeah.
He has, like you said, he's covered Bacharach songs. There's a movie called Notting Hill.
Yeah.
Julia, you know that song, She Could Be the Beauty of the Beast? I forget the name of the composer's a French artist, but he sang that song. He's all over the place in the music that he's explored and written and done. He did a big project with the Roots, with Questlove and the Roots.
That interests me too. I'm like, God, that's part of why I'm like, okay, like he's obviously like a fixture
Well
for
respected.
a lot of artists.
But you said so. That's interesting that you say. Elvis Costello is not an artist that I would ever picture someone saying, I'd love to hear him here do an instrumental, because I think that always one of the things is his lyrics. Always.
Yeah.
His turn of phrase.
But I feel like these guys always, especially people that put out a lot, they get interested in other forms. Like it's almost a cliche. It's like, what I really want to do is paint. You know, at some point someone says that. But like, I think both Paul McCartney and Billy Joel have made like classical compositions.
Yeah.
They're going to try and write an opera. You know, they have interests in other forms than just their what they're most known for. Yeah.
Well, I wish Elvis Costello would shut the fuck up is a statement that while I don't agree with it, I totally understand it.
That's so funny.
You know, I do. I understand it. Yeah.
Okay, so this was not my favorite album. However, this list was a great list. Gish, Bullhead, The De La Soul is Dead, Sailing on the Seas of Cheese, all really, really engaging albums. And this was a fun one, John. Thank you.
It was.
We will see everyone for June 1991 very soon. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.